What you're about to hear sounds unbelievable, but it's real and it's happening right now. In the last 48 hours, the United States and Israel launched the largest coordinated military operation in the Middle East in decades. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who ruled Iran for 36 years, is dead. Thousands of Iranians are celebrating in the streets, but thousands more have been killed. This is the story of Operation Roaring Lion and how February 28, 2026 changed everything. On February 28, 2026, at approximately 4 a.m. local time, the United States and Israel launched simultaneous strikes across Iran. This wasn't just an airstrike. This was a full-scale military operation involving hundreds of aircraft, cruise missiles, and strategic targeting of Iran's most critical infrastructure. The operation had two code names. Israel called it Operation Roaring Lion, while the United States called it Operation Epic Fury. According to Israeli defense officials, this operation was planned for months, with the timing finalized several weeks ago. The strikes targeted 5 key areas across Iran: nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, military command centers in Tehran, Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters, air defense systems in Kermanshah, and most significantly, the compound of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in northern Tehran. According to 4 Israeli security officials briefed on the operation, the strike on Khamenei's compound was surgical and precise. Israeli intelligence had tracked his exact location for weeks. When the missiles hit, Khamenei, his family members, and several of his closest advisors were inside. The compound was completely destroyed. By Saturday evening, President Donald Trump confirmed what many suspected. In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote, "Khamenei, one of the most people in history, is dead. This is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all great Americans, and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of." On Sunday, March 1st, Iranian state media confirmed Khamenei's death and announced 40 days of national mourning. The man who had ruled Iran with an iron fist since 1989 was gone, but he wasn't the only one. According to Israeli defense spokesperson Efi Defrin, the strikes killed several other senior Iranian officials, including IRGC commander Mohammad Pakpour, Defense Minister Amir Nasirzadeh, Supreme Leader Advisor Ali Shamkhani, and Chief of Staff Mohammad Bagheri. 4 senior intelligence commanders were also eliminated. Iranian authorities reported that at least 201 people were killed in the initial strikes across 24 provinces. However, one strike in particular has drawn international outrage. Iran claims that a US-Israeli airstrike hit an elementary school in Minab in southern Iran. The US and Israel have not confirmed this, and the claim remains disputed. Iran's response was swift and massive. Within hours of the strikes, Iran launched what can only be described as a tidal wave of retaliation, hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones targeting US military installations and Israeli cities across the Middle East. According to the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defense, Iran fired approximately 137 missiles and 209 drones. Most were intercepted by air defense systems, but not all of them. In Israel, at least 9 people were killed when Iranian missiles struck the town of Beit Shemesh. Sirens blared across Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and other major cities as Israel's Iron Dome defense system worked overtime to intercept the incoming barrage. But Iran also struck US military bases across the region. The US Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was targeted. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, one of America's largest military installations in the Middle East, came under attack. US bases in Kuwait and Jordan were hit, and perhaps most surprisingly, Iranian missiles reached the United Arab Emirates. In Dubai, falling debris from intercepted missiles caused fires on the famous Palm Jumeirah Island. A fire broke out near the Burj Al Arab Hotel, one of the world's most iconic luxury hotels. Another explosion occurred near the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. At least one Pakistani civilian was killed in Abu Dhabi when debris struck a residential area. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait all condemned Iran's attacks. These are Muslim-majority countries, and Iran attacked them instead of focusing solely on the US and Israel. This decision has caused significant anger in the Arab world. All of these countries temporarily closed their airspace. Hundreds of flights were cancelled. Major airlines suspended service to the region. Dubai, which had been marketing itself as the safest city in the world, suddenly found itself in the crossfire of a major regional conflict. To understand why this happened now, we need to go back to January 2026. While the world was focused on other news, something horrific was happening inside Iran that the world barely noticed. Since late December 2025, mass protests had erupted across Iran. These weren't small demonstrations. These were nationwide uprisings involving hundreds of thousands of Iranians demanding freedom from the oppressive Islamic regime. People were protesting economic collapse, energy shortages, corruption, and decades of authoritarian rule under Ayatollah Khamenei. The Iranian government's response, according to multiple human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, Iranian security forces carried out one of the largest modern Middle Eastern history. On January 8 and 9, 2026, security forces opened fire on protesters across Iran with live ammunition. The death toll from just those 2 days is staggering. The Iranian government initially claimed 3,117 people were killed, but independent investigations tell a very different story. Iran International, citing leaked classified documents and medical records, reported that more than 36,500 Iranians were killed in the crackdown. The US-based human rights activists news agency confirmed at least 7,015 deaths, with thousands more under investigation. The Sunday Times reported that Iranian doctors estimated between 16,500 and 18,000 deaths. Think about that for a moment. In just 2 days, the Iranian government may have killed more of its own citizens than any other protest crackdown in modern history. Videos showed security forces shooting protesters in the head from rooftops. Medical workers reported that wounded protesters who made it to hospitals were executed in their hospital beds by security forces. The Iranian government imposed a near-total internet shutdown to hide them from the world. Families couldn't communicate with each other, information couldn't get out. The world barely knew what was happening. But US and Israeli intelligence knew. They had sources on the ground. They saw them, and they saw something else, an opportunity. But there was another critical factor driving this operation: Iran's nuclear program. For years, Iran has been enriching uranium at underground facilities, pushing closer and closer to weapons-grade material. Despite international sanctions and diplomatic negotiations, Iran refused to stop. Intelligence assessments suggested Iran was months, perhaps weeks, away from having enough material to build nuclear weapons. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu both stated that they could not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. For Israel, an Iranian nuclear weapon represents an existential threat. Iran has repeatedly called for Israel's destruction, supports terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, and has launched multiple attacks on Israeli territory. For the United States, Iranian nuclear weapons would destabilize the entire Middle East, potentially triggering a nuclear arms race in the region. Recent negotiations between the US and Iran, mediated by Oman, failed to produce any breakthrough. Iran continued enriching uranium. Intelligence reports indicated that Iran was accelerating its program, possibly sensing that a military strike was coming. So Trump and Netanyahu made a decision: strike now, before it's too late. Here's where the story gets really interesting. When news broke that Khamenei was dead, Iranians had very different reactions. In cities across Iran, Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, Kermanshah, Karaj, thousands of Iranians poured into the streets to celebrate. Videos showed people dancing, honking car horns, setting off fireworks, and chanting, "Freedom, freedom." Women removed their mandatory hijabs and burned them in the streets. People waved the old lion and sun flag, a symbol of pre-revolutionary Iran. One video from Karaj showed a crowd of young Iranians celebrating and chanting, "Thank you, Trump. Thank you, Israel." Another video from Tehran showed people distributing sweets to strangers, a traditional Persian way of celebrating good news. This is not what you typically see when a country's leader is killed by foreign powers. But Khamenei was not a typical leader. He was a brutal dictator who had ruled Iran for 36 years, denying Iranians basic freedoms and violently crushing any dissent. In Los Angeles, home to the largest Iranian diaspora community in the world, thousands of Iranian Americans gathered to celebrate. Similar celebrations occurred in Toronto, London, Paris, and other cities with large Iranian populations. But not all Iranians celebrated. In some areas, particularly among regime loyalists and members of the Revolutionary Guard, there was mourning. The Iranian government organized mourning ceremonies and broadcast images of supporters crying and praying for Khamenei. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah and a prominent opposition figure, released a statement calling this moment the beginning of the end for the Islamic Republic. He urged Iranian security forces to join the nation and help ensure a stable and secure transition. So what happens now? Iran is facing its biggest political crisis since the 1979 revolution. According to Iran's constitution, when the supreme leader dies, a temporary leadership council takes over until the Assembly of Experts, a body of 88 senior clerics, selects a new supreme leader. This council consists of the president, the head of the judiciary, and a member of the Guardian Council. However, many of Iran's senior leaders were killed in the strikes. The head of the judiciary survived, but the defense minister, the IRGC commander, and several key advisors are dead. The most senior surviving official is Ali Larijani, secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, and one of Khamenei's closest confidants. In a post on social media Saturday, Larijani vowed that Iran would deliver Israel and the US an unforgettable lesson. But Larijani faces a massive challenge. The military command structure has been decapitated. Iran's nuclear facilities have been severely damaged. The air defense systems have been destroyed, giving Israel and the US complete air superiority. And most importantly, the Iranian people are rising up. President Trump has made it clear that the bombing will continue uninterrupted throughout the week, or as long as necessary, until the regime is completely dismantled. Trump has called for regime change and urged IRGC members to peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots or face immunity denial. Netanyahu stated that the goal is to remove the existential threat posed by the terrorist regime in Iran and create conditions for the brave Iranian people to take their destiny into their own hands. This conflict has disrupted the entire Middle East. Major airlines have cancelled flights to the region. Emirates, Qatar Airways, Etihad, and others suspended operations. Airspace across the Gulf has been closed intermittently. Oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points, have been affected, though tanker traffic has not completely stopped. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE have expressed support for defending against Iranian aggression, but have also called for de-escalation. They don't want to see a wider regional war. Iran's proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq have made threats but haven't launched major attacks yet. They may be waiting to see how the situation develops. Russia and China have condemned the strikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin called Khamenei's killing a cynical murder. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi called the attack unacceptable and condemned the blatant killing of a sovereign leader. But neither Russia nor China has taken any concrete action. Russia is bogged down in Ukraine, and China has no desire for military involvement in the Middle East. Let me address the question everyone is asking. Is this the start of World War III? The short answer is no. Here's why. First, this is not a conflict between major global powers. This is the United States and Israel against Iran, a regional power, but not a superpower. Second, Iran's ability to retaliate is now severely limited. Their military command has been destroyed, their air defenses are gone, and they're facing complete air superiority from the US and Israel. Third, Iran has no major allies who will come to its defense militarily. Russia is busy with Ukraine. China doesn't want war. Iran's proxies are relatively weak without Iranian backing. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, the Iranian people don't want to fight for this regime. Tens of thousands were protesting against Khamenei just weeks ago. Many Iranians are celebrating his death. This is not to say the conflict is over, or that it won't escalate further. There could be more strikes, more retaliation, and more casualties. But a global world war, that's not what we're looking at here. What we're witnessing is the potential collapse of the Islamic Republic of Iran, one of the Middle East's most oppressive regimes. To understand why so many Iranians are celebrating, you need to understand what life has been like under Khamenei's rule. In 1979, Iran went through an Islamic revolution. Before that revolution, Iran was a relatively modern, secular country. Women wore what they wanted, there was freedom of expression, and Iran was developing rapidly. But after the revolution, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini established an Islamic republic based on strict Sharia law. When Khomeini died in 1989, Ali Khamenei took over and continued this oppressive system for another 36 years. Under Khamenei's rule, women were forced to wear hijabs. If they didn't, they could be arrested by the morality police and imprisoned. Just a few years ago, a young woman named Mahsa Amini was beaten to death by police for not wearing her hijab properly. Her death sparked nationwide protests known as the Woman Life Freedom Movement. Freedom of speech didn't exist. Anyone who criticized the government could be arrested, tortured, or executed. Thousands of political prisoners languished in Iranian jails. Executions became routine. Economic conditions deteriorated. Despite having massive oil reserves, Iran's economy collapsed under sanctions and mismanagement. The Iranian currency lost most of its value. Inflation skyrocketed. Electricity and gas shortages became common. Meanwhile, Khamenei's regime spent billions supporting terrorist groups abroad, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi rebels, while Iranians suffered at home. This is why thousands of Iranians took to the streets in January 2026. This is why so many are now celebrating his death. So what happens next? There are several possible scenarios. Scenario 1. Regime change and democracy. The best-case scenario is that Iran transitions to a democratic government. With Khamenei gone and the Revolutionary Guard weakened, reformist forces within Iran could take power. The Iranian people could finally have the freedom they've been demanding for decades. Reza Pahlavi and other opposition figures are calling for exactly this. They want a peaceful transition to democracy, free elections, and the restoration of basic human rights. Scenario 2. Hardline IRGC takeover. The worst-case scenario is that the Revolutionary Guard seizes complete control and installs an even more hardline regime. This could lead to more repression, more conflict, and continued instability. However, this seems less likely given that the IRGC's command structure has been severely damaged and the Iranian people are clearly fed up with the Islamic Republic. Scenario 3. Civil war and chaos. Another possibility is that Iran descends into civil war with different factions fighting for control, humanitarian crisis, and regional spillover effects. Scenario 4. US-backed government President Trump has made it clear that he wants a friendly government in Iran. He may try to install Iranian opposition figures who will cooperate with the United States, similar to what happened in Afghanistan after 2001. The big question is, what do the Iranian people want, and will they have a real say in what comes next? We are witnessing a historic moment. After 47 years of Islamic rule, first under Khomeini, then under Khamenei, Iran has a chance for real change. For decades, Iranians have suffered under a regime that denied them basic freedoms, crushed dissent with brutal force, and spent the nation's wealth supporting terrorist groups instead of helping its own people. Now, with Khamenei dead and the Revolutionary Guard severely weakened, Iran stands at a crossroads. Will it transition to democracy and freedom, or will it slide into chaos or fall under another authoritarian regime? The next few weeks will be critical. Trump has vowed to continue strikes until the regime is completely dismantled. Israel has air superiority and can strike anywhere in Iran, and the Iranian people are demanding change. One thing is certain: the Middle East will never be the same. The Islamic Republic of Iran, as we've known it for nearly 5 decades, is collapsing. What replaces it will shape the region for generations to come. For the tens of thousands of Iranians who were killed by Khamenei's security forces in January, this moment comes too late. For their families, for the protesters who were tortured and executed, for the women who were beaten for showing their hair, justice, if you can call it that, has finally arrived. But justice for past crimes won't bring them back, and it won't automatically create a better future. That will take courage, wisdom, and the determination of the Iranian people to build the free society they deserve. The question now is, will the world support them? Or will we see another chapter of intervention, proxy conflicts, and missed opportunities? The story is still being written, but one chapter has definitively ended. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who ruled Iran with an iron fist for 36 years, is gone, and Iran will never be the same. What do you think? Is this the end of the Islamic Republic? Will Iran finally achieve freedom, or are we headed for more chaos and conflict? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.